Welcome to CareTalk, America's home for incisive debate about healthcare business and policy. I'm David Williams, president of Health Business Group.
And I'm John Driscoll, the CEO of CareCentric. So, David, who do we have on deck today?
Well, John, it must be a guest from last year because for some reason we've got somebody who's an expert about testing for COVID-19, but we're way past that, John. We're talking about vaccines now.
Whoa.
It's all done.
Jason Kelly, the CEO of Ginkgo Bioworks. Welcome.
John, nice to be on.
What possessed you to name your company Ginkgo Bioworks anyways, and what does that stand for?
Well, all right. The whole theory behind Ginkgo is we're going to make it as easy to program cells as it is to program computers, because at the end of the day, they run on digital code, right? It's ATCs and Gs, not zeros and ones, but you can read it and you can write it. And so we think of it like programming. And we wanted to pick an organism that was back around the same time as our favorite organisms, the dinosaurs. And Ginkgo trees have been around since then. They're a living fossil. They're a few 100 million years old. So that's how we landed on the Ginkgo tree.
Awesome. And are you creating organisms right now as we speak?
Yeah, Ginkgo. We to our knowledge, design more synthetic DNA than any other place on Earth. So we basically, you go on your computer, you type ATC, GGG, you hit print, and out of the machines at our lab or at partner companies of ours like Twist Bioscience, the DNA gets printed, and then we add it to the genome of a cell to make it do something new. Kind of like installing an app on your phone or something like that.
Reminds me of that Isaac Asimov thing that what we now treat as normal used to be science fiction, and what science fiction now will be normal in the future. Is it true that you were quoted as that you're going to turn seaweed into car seats?
Seaweed into car seats. That's not, anything is possible that I could have been quoted on. Probably, actually, I'll tell you a thing that just came out from a really cool company, a company called Bolt Threads just announced they were going to have a partnership with Adidas to do mushroom-based shoes. And so they have these really cool, it like just came out like 2 days ago, and you see them like grow these giant, look like giant marshmallows of mushrooms. And then they've turned it into like one of the kind of classic Adidas shoes with Adidas. So
yes. David, I'm not gonna get into a reference to you and mushrooms. So why don't you ask the next question and get us back?
Well, John, I'm gonna have to say I'm a little more concerned than I was before. I mean, you told me you had this ginkgo guy coming on. I thought we were going to be talking about supplements because I use that to cure my depression and insomnia, et cetera. But no, I think this is quite interesting. Obviously, on the synthetic biology now, like everybody else, you've been pulled in the other direction, due to the pandemic. And testing is one of those things that was just a major issue that you and I know John identified up front along with many others. But maybe we could just roll back a year or so and say, what have been some of the issues since the start of the pandemic as they relate to testing?
Yeah, I mean, so just so you know how we got into it, right? So Ginkgo's goal, like I said, is to program cells like you program computers, and just like Google would have cybersecurity or PayPal would have fraud detection. In the long arc of Ginkgo, we think it's important for us to have biosecurity, because that is how you're going to enter an era where we can engineer biology broadly in a way that's safe and responsible. And COVID-19 represents this sort of, for lack of a better word, opportunity to build out biosecurity infrastructure. And so back in March of last year, when it was clear this thing wasn't going away, we opened our platform up. We said we'd do $25 million of free work using our infrastructure. That led to a project with Moderna, for example, as well as a few other folks in the work on raw materials for vaccines. And then the other area we leaned into was testing, but not diagnostic testing, testing for purposes of keeping businesses and schools open. So sort of surveillance style testing.
Yeah, and I think what drew Jason and I into kind of founding and co-founding Testing for America, David, is that we have technology available to solve our problem, and that the in many ways the first vaccine for the economy and for society is really sensible testing. And we had the tools, and we didn't invest in it and scale it fast enough. And I think what's interesting is, one of the biggest social challenges of the last year has been opening and keeping open schools. And Jason and I were involved at TFA. We're involved in kept keeping open a historically black college, Delaware State, proving that a public college could be kept as open and run with people actually in class as some of the private schools with all of their endowments. And now, Jason, you're leveraging that same synthetic biology technology to keep open schools. You maybe talk a little bit about why testing is sort of the infrastructure, and we're all talking about infrastructure these days, that we needed to keep schools open, and how it's working in the public schools that you're working in.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah. So I think the key thing to first realize is, there is a big industry of like diagnostic testing. And, you get a diagnostic test because you're sick, right? You're like, oh, I think I might have this. So I'm going to go to my doctor and get checked up and see what's going on with me. And so there's a lot of motivation to go out and get yourself tested. Surveillance testing or monitoring testing is much closer to like weather satellites or something, right? Like it's a way to know how is the virus spreading around in our communities, and what are the targeted public health efforts you can make so that you can help contain spread without having to like close the whole place. Because we know that closing the whole place is very socially destructive, right? It hurts the economy, it hurts students, right? Like that's like your last line of defense. And so in a perfect world, you'd know exactly where the thing was, and you'd be like, hey, let's close that school. Or, hey, let's just close that classroom because I know that classroom had a positive case, but keep the rest of the school open. And so the idea is if we had better monitoring, we could be more targeted, which makes life less miserable while we wait for everyone to get vaccinated. And that we just haven't needed this. Like we haven't had something like this happen since 1918 at this scale. And so we tried first to just throw diagnostic testing at it. And turns out diagnostic tests, no one wants to have something stuck way up their nose once a week as part of their, monitoring efforts. And so you had to develop new technology. And so that's what we've been doing the last year is trying to make it easy enough. Yeah.
And we didn't even have the capacity to do it.
For a long time, that's right. We didn't even have capacity to test sick people for a while, but then that got built up. And now we have enough capacity. And so the question is, can we run the experiment of using testing to make life more livable while waiting for widespread vaccination? And that's sort of the new opportunity.
So I guess the thing is, with school and trying to get people to do pooled testing, you just have to take advantage of the fact that teenagers love to spit and drool all over the place, and then just sort of somehow organize that for testing. But how does that work in practice? I mean, do I have it more or less right?
Yeah, it's more like picking their nose that we get to take advantage of. So here's the trick. If you want to do testing of every student every week, once a week in a school, which is sort of like what resonates with both teachers and parents in our experience. And this is what we're doing in statewide in Massachusetts. We're doing it in Baltimore City public schools. We're doing it in Newark. We're doing it in Milwaukee. So this works in a wide range of places. It needs to be non-disruptive to the school day and not require like a healthcare professional to do it. And so what we landed on was what we call a classroom pool test, which is the students self-collect all the way down to kindergarten. They put a Q-tip in their nose. It is just like picking your nose, like some of the school videos, like YouTube videos to explain.
It's like you're doing it something you're doing anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyone can do it. And you walk to the front of the room. You put that Q-tip size swab into a tube. The whole class puts their swabs all together. Teacher just observes. Administrator comes by, closes the tube, puts it in the box, ships it to a lab. Lab runs a PCR test and tests the whole class at once. And it's either no, life goes on as normal, or yes, and then you would do a follow-up test to see who in the classroom was the positive case, and you do follow-up mitigation. And so it takes less than, it's like 8 minutes for a classroom. You can do it once a week very easily. It's inexpensive because it's like 25 tests for the price of one. And so that's the strategy. It's a classroom pooled test, and it's working. It's working. We're doing it across. I don't know. It's like hundreds now. I think 1,000 schools and many students.
And what's interesting to me, Jason, really exciting, is that it's working in urban areas. It's working in public. It's not just a private school elite thing where they've some technology. This is an affordable technology. With people just so wanting this vaccine to be done with us, and it really isn't. I mean, how important do you think surveillance testing is now and will continue to be? Based on, what's effectively a viral threat that's, that doesn't appear to be going away. In fact, it appears to be morphing, whether it's B117, all the different, pick your number, pick your version. What's the role of surveillance testing? Because I think the one thing we proved is if you shut down the economy and shut down schools, a lot of people suffer, and particularly those at the lowest, at the lowest end of the economic spectrum. What's the role of testing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think of it is one piece of like a much better biosecurity infrastructure that we should have on the other side of COVID. And you can think of it like we're kind of like unpatched systems, like taking in viral code all the time, right? And that that approach to public health, I think we're just going to need to improve. And so like I do think much better monitoring, I think much faster vaccines are the two things that are going to come out of COVID-19 that are going to change completely how we deal with infectious disease in the future. And we've already got the rapid vaccine in, like that got invested in and proven, and now we're kind of muscling up the supply chain there. I think in the next 6 to 9 months, we get to run the experiment of widespread monitoring to see how well that can work. I think it is an experiment worth running. So we'll see. Yeah.
But I think you hit on a really important point, because I think there's really a 3-part strategy. It's improve therapeutics, improve vaccines, and testing.
What happened with therapeutics, John?
Well, they're continuing to get better. That Regeneron cocktail. Yeah. And they're figuring out a way to get it into workflow at the appropriate time. And there's other therapeutics behind it. But I think that what the variants show is that this is not going away. That taking in this new code or really new threats. Yeah. But I still worry that there's not an awareness that we've just had effectively. I don't buy the China story, but effectively a war on our society delivered through a biological vector. That if we had surveillance testing, as your point, it's part of infrastructure, not just for this particular virus, but for everything. I think it would strengthen our defenses, because if you look at the convergence of man and in the environment, and man and technology and biowarfare threats, this feels like it should be part of our public health and, frankly, public security infrastructure.
Well, John, let me pull you back. I know you've got this China syndrome as usual, but let me pull you back into the here and now. So, I'm hearing great things about the pool testing, in the schools, and I have kids in the Massachusetts schools, public and private. And my understanding is that, there was a real push for this from parents. The states took it on. Obviously, you guys have been helping to make it happen. But now they're actually having trouble getting people to actually participate in it. And they're trying to understand, why, what would it take to get someone to do it? Because the kids are saying, well, I'm not that worried about getting COVID. My parents are vaccinated, and I'm kind of sick of it. And I maybe have to show up to school 10 minutes early, which I don't want to deal with. So what's actually kind of going on practically on the ground?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it varies by community. So you have to do like part of it. I'd say it's a little bit less on just like people thinking it's like too much time out of their day. You do see a question of like, is this collecting personal information about my kids? Right. And this is one of the areas on that where like the pooled collection actually helps, because everybody's getting all put together in one thing. You don't know which swab belongs to which person. By nature of how you collected it, actually reduces. We don't even collect the names of the students. It's just, Mr. Smith's class or whatever. And but that's one of the bigger concerns. And then you also have, people are just, particularly in communities that have been hit very hard by this, they can have a lack of trust in the medical system, lack of trust of, people in positions of authority, and on and on. And so there is a lot of, an important part of this is public health messaging and engaging with that community and like trying to meet them where they are. So they should be hearing from the teachers. They should be hearing from other parents. They shouldn't be hearing from like a biotech company in Boston, right? And so like getting, leaders on the ground to actually get real experience and feel like they understand and trust the platform, and then having them talk to folks in their community. That's what we're finding works well. But it's a big part of this. Like don't underestimate, half of this is technology and half of this is social, which makes sense because, infectious disease spreads by people, right? Like half the element of this whole thing, it really is how people respond to interventions. And so you got to think about that just as much as the technology. I think that's true.
Yeah, see, David, that's where I think that this notion of it as being kind of part of our, not just public health, but personal health security infrastructure we've got to sort of have a different view of this. This is, with zoonotic viruses that can jump from different species to us. We are going to be dealing with more and more of these threats. And that's right. I think that what Jason's doing is path breaking around creating that a rationale and an infrastructure that I think is going to be essential, because I suspect that this won't be the only COVID virus. I mean, we're actually seeing these other versions of it are just new versions of COVID viruses, and there'll be more. And I think that with the right infrastructure, but I do think there's basically COVID fatigue, and without some combination of public and private leadership, Jason, I think it's going to be hard, other than raw fear of the economy shutting down and schools shutting down, to keep people focused on it and keep folks like you to get paid to do it, because I think that pool testing of this sort is going to be the new normal if we're going to get this right.
Yeah, I'm like sort of cautiously optimistic for the first time since we got involved with this, year and a half ago or whatever, John. I think you have federal leadership that is supportive of the idea of building out this kind of technology for reopening schools. You have a lot of funding that's just gone out to states to support it. And you have, I think, parents and state governments that are motivated to keep schools open, but you have a big unvaccinated population with students, and we still have a big outbreak in this country. And so like balancing those things and it is a great opportunity to validate how monitoring on a regular basis can be used for containment. I think it's really a unique moment. The only other thing I guess that's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, John, you do, as usual, a good job of painting a nice portrait of the hellscape that's out there for all of us. And I want to know about... This is
manageable. David, this is manageable. You got to take more of that ginkgo.
Yeah, but I take enough of it. I emptied the bottle.
I think what's frustrating to me is we didn't invest in, we didn't overinvest in testing and surveillance and containment up front, because it's a little bit like we broad spectrum antibiotics that blow out your entire system when you shut the economy down. We really couldn't target, contain, heal, care for our country, and I think that's going to be the new model. And I think what Jason and I have been brainstorming about is how do we get people from a public health and a national security perspective dialed in there, because the technology that he is adopting and applying to the private sector, other countries are using in both their national defense, their research, and their public health infrastructure, and winning that race. And part of that is building up our capabilities here. Is going to actually, I think, what's going to drive economic success in the 21st century. I think biology is going to be one of the big vectors, with synthetic biology, with big data and AI, where countries are going to, and you see it in China's massive investments in their biotech infrastructure, Jason. I don't know whether you want to speak to that.
Yeah.
But in addition to being public health oriented, it's also going to drive the economy.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing I would say, John, is the other thing COVID has taught us is that biology doesn't respect borders, right? And so if the U.S. is thinking about building out biosecurity, which I think would be wise, considering just the very obvious national security risk associated with 30,000 letters of RNA over the last year. And so if you're going to build U.S. biosecurity, it's global biosecurity. Right? There is no such thing as just U.S. biosecurity. And so I think the U.S. should take this opportunity, particularly in the next year, help other countries out. Yes, we should be the vaccine manufacturing plant for the world. Yes, we should be developing the types of technologies for monitoring and the global weather satellites for for infectious disease, right? Of course, this is what the U.S. does, right? And so I think there is a unique moment for us, and with this administration, I think there's a chance they lean into it over the next year to build all that. We absolutely should. We should.
So on the near term thing here. So John, you're going to China. You're going to 5 years from now.
Are you having a hard time tracking?
World War VII. No, but I'm trying to figure out, John. Like, okay, we're going to get the schools reopened. Well, guess what? The summer's coming. What's going to happen in the summer? We're going to go around to the beach and figure out who's positive on the beach. How's the pool testing work for that?
Well, I think it comes back to the social aspect that Jason touched on, is do we have leadership that pays attention to public health and thinks more than one Twitter cycle ahead? And with that, locally and nationally, I think I do think that private and public union teachers, leaders, conservative, we do now understand that we have had a threat and it has hurt us. And I think turning that into action, and to Jason's point, there's a huge economic opportunity, but it's foundationally, we're only going to reopen the economy and keep it open and schools if we continue to build out this infrastructure. That's the lesson of the last 6 to 12 months. And so I'm actually I'm probably modestly optimistic as well on that. But I think understanding the threat and the opportunity is what's going to get us there. Because viruses, I mean, you look at Michigan right now.
Yeah,
you're seeing explosions, micro explosions of the virus. It's unclear why. And I don't know whether, Jason, you've got any experience in the pool testing in those schools, but they're really suffering right now. They don't have enough. I think they've got enough therapeutics, but they're really suffering from just. And
then you're starting to see places close schools again, right? Like this is what's going to happen. This is my. Yeah, I mean, David, to answer your question, I think schools are actually kind of a unique organ in society in the sense that they cross-cut everybody, right? And so like, I actually think they're like kind of centers of like community or public health, like they're unique in that respect. And so
they absolutely are. They absolutely
like really like it's like an unappreciated thing, but like if you actually start regularly doing monitoring in the schools, it like helps keep the schools open. It helps keeps kids safe. And it also like gives you, if you're a public health department in a state, it gives you awareness of what's going on. Right. And so like that is,
it's your public health dashboard, David. I mean,
all right, John.
David, are you tracking?
John, I got a question for Jason. So there's a lot of money involved here. Now, Jason, when no one was looking, you guys borrowed, let's just round it down to $1 billion from Uncle Sam. Now, this is, I think, in the same tranche as when Kodak had to give its money back, but you guys were legitimate. So you're going to pay it back? What are you doing with it? We're talking about like global biosecurity infrastructure. What's going on? In all seriousness, we put some investment. We got something riding on you guys.
Yeah. So we got approved for a loan from the Development Finance Corp, DFC, as part of. It's actually the first time there was an executive order last summer that allowed DFC to provide loans to U.S. companies for the first time. It's been an international development organization in the past, and so we were one of the first folks to be approved. And the idea is it's earmarked for this type of building up biosecurity infrastructure in the U.S. and also like supply chain surety. So, and I'm like the work we've been doing in particular around vaccine supply chains. That's what we're going to earmark a lot of it for. Yeah.
I actually have a question about that one. So on the, we talked mostly about testing here. You mentioned up front that you had done some work in terms of, vaccine development, and there's been, really a terrific number of vaccines that manufactured at this point. And it's notable that even with J&J out of the picture for the moment, that the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines have really scaled up, and you have some role in that. And I would like to hear just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the short answer to this, the challenge around nucleic acid vaccines. So the exciting thing is they are fast, and so like developing a new one is just a matter of getting a new sequence for a variant, synthesizing some DNA, putting it through a process at Moderna or Pfizer, and you can get a new vaccine out pretty quick with this technology. That's really exciting. The downside was they'd never been made at scale, like a new type of vaccine technology. So trying to produce hundreds of millions of doses, like the supply chain had gaps all over the place. And so what we've been doing is just finding places where we can be relevant to that. So the two big categories are basically anybody who is like doing a fermentation, like where you grow bacteria up to produce the DNA. We can help optimize that fermentation so you grow the cells better, you get more DNA out. And then the second area is turning DNA into RNA. You need all these like enzymes to do that, and those enzymes are in short supply. And so working on better ways to make those in the future so that the cost for mRNA vaccines goes down, capacity goes up, and you can maybe get these out to countries that aren't just the U.S. Over time is where we see opportunity. So,
but I mean, but those vaccines, David, I think really make the point about why what Ginkgo and what Jason's doing is so exciting. I mean, with the genetic code of the virus laid out, within 48 days, we had a design for an mRNA vaccine that would work, that we could literally program to find, solve, and cure the body for this virus. It's pretty remarkable that we can now.
Yeah, it's code as drugs, right? Like in Moderna, they talk about it that way, right? They're like, yeah, the beauty of it is their drug is encoded in the RNA. You put new code, you get new drugs. Like it is a really exciting development. And honestly, like no one would have ever pegged it at the efficacy it ended up hitting. Like that, before this whole thing started,
was betting. Everybody was betting against BioNXT.
Correct.
So like that was it is again it's a biopharma company that was using the technologies that Jason's used. Why he's focused on corn versus people, Jason? You got to explain that to me at some other point. To really create the drugs that using the same tools, the things that are making us sick to make us heal, and programming it. It's really amazing.
Well, John, I've had all my questions answered today, and I'm going to rest easy. The COVID insomnia or whatever they're calling it is now cured for me, as well as any lingering or approaching virus. So I'm going to say thank you to Jason Kelly from Ginkgo and Testing for America, and John Driscoll from wherever you're from. I'm David Williams, president of Health Business Group.
and I'm John Driscoll. Jason, it has been a joy to connect on this and focus on something that I still think, while we're modestly optimistic, we still need to be making the point that this is an essential element, but you've given us a reason to be confident that American technology can still win, even if it's beyond most people's imagination. So thank you for that. I'm John Driscoll, the CEO of CareCentrix. Thank you, Jason. And if you like what you've heard or you haven't, please tell us.